Wes Craven's Scream is one of the most iconic and beloved franchises ever. Wes Craven was an iconic horror director and brought us horror fans franchise classics that will live on forever. It's so unfortunate that he passed away, and we didn't get to see Wes's legacy in Scream and other franchises be continued. Luckily, his legacy will live on forever, though, through the incredible films he created. And so, as promised, I'm getting ready to release videos on all of the original plans for all of the Scream films. Alternate endings, directions, story plots, etc. And I'll go in order starting with Scream 1 and finish with the original trilogy planned for Scream 4 through 6. So make sure you're subscribed and turn on bell notifications so you never miss an upload. And don't forget to like this video. It helps me out a lot, lets me know that you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. So I figured the best place to start would be before Scream 1 even took place, and how Wes Craven wasn't the director. Yes, that's right. Wes Craven, who is the Scream legacy, almost wasn't the director. Could you imagine what Scream would have been if this was the case? Let me know what you think down in the comments below, because I'd love to hear from you and your opinion. But anyway, so Kevin Williamson wrote Scream, and there immediately became a bidding war. 5 studios in total wanted Scream, but Kevin ultimately decided to take Dimension's $400,000 offer to buy the script. The original title for the film, as many people know, was Scary Movie, which in hindsight is actually kind of funny given that the Wayans brothers made an iconic franchise spoof of Scream and even other variant horror films titled Scary Movie. So it's kind of cool to see it come full circle in a lot of ways. But Kevin Williamson, Scream was inspired by actual events, getting his inspiration for Scream from a real-life series of student murders in Gainesville, Florida in 1990, perpetrated by killer Danny Harold Rawling, who was later dubbed the Gainesville Ripper. Williams was also inspired by John Carpenter's 1978 horror classic Halloween because that was Williamson's favorite film. So, with the great story and studio behind him, it was time for the process of finding a director. The Weinstein brothers, who owned Dimension, had directors already in mind for Scream and originally approached noted horror directors George A. Romero and Sam Raimi for directorial duties. But luckily, they both turned the project down, so enter Wes Craven, who had directed already the classic and iconic A Nightmare on Elm Street, and he was approached by the studio, and he initially passed as well, believe it or not. But he changed his mind and signed on to direct after Drew Barrymore agreed to appear in the film as the lead role of Sidney Prescott. Yes, originally Drew Barrymore was supposed to be the iconic character that we know of Sidney Prescott. She, instead of being the opening kill scene, would have been casted as the lovable Sidney. So let me know what you would have thought about that. Would you have wanted to see Drew Barrymore, or as Nev, sort of became Sidney as we know it? Like, could you not see anybody else playing the role of Sidney other than Nev? I'd really like to know down in the comments. So, the way that Drew Barrymore became the iconic opening scene kill of Scream was Barrymore changed her mind about playing the lead 5 weeks before production was set to begin. Barrymore instead suggested to everyone that she would play the part of Casey Becker, the teen terrorized by the killer in the opening scene. The whole idea and thought behind this was to have the audience's expectations of a star as big as Drew Barrymore. Because you got to remember, Drew Barrymore was huge at this time. And so somebody of her stature would obviously survive the entire film. And by killing her, you really set the tone the rest of the way. She dies in the opening scene. You're like, wait a minute. Like, if she died, what, is everybody going to die? And it really set the tone for the Scream franchise going forward. But that being said, the issue was now to find a lead to play the role of Sidney Prescott, because Barrymore was set to play it, and they had such little time before filming began. So casting directors approached all kinds of female actresses, from Alicia Witt to Brittany Murphy, and even Reese Witherspoon were all supposed to take over the role of Sidney Prescott. But eventually they stumbled and came across their Sidney, casting Nev Campbell, and as we know, the rest is history. But luckily, Wes changed his mind thanks in part to Drew Barrymore. So we owe Drew Barrymore a ton of credit. But thankfully, he also stayed even after she changed her mind to play the lead. And even Drew Barrymore was able to film all of her scenes in just 5 days. So even her presence on set was extremely short-lived. And it would have been very interesting, in my opinion, given everything that we know now, of what kind of Scream we would have gotten had George A. Romero or Sam Raimi been at the helm. You know, it makes you wonder if the franchise would have been as successful, and even the type of direction in which, like, the franchise would have taken. Like, would it have been the same, or would it have been something, you know, completely different? You know, like, both Sam Raimi and even George A. Romero, their styles are completely different, especially from Wes. So, you know, it'd be cool to see somewhere in some alternate universe that this exists in both forms. I just think it'd be cool to see, but let me know what you think down in the comments. Anyway, so obviously when we think of Scream, we think of Wes Craven. I mean, he embodies Scream, and we couldn't imagine anyone else leading this charge. I mean, his vision, his storytelling, and directing it's really bar none. And not to take away from any other directors, especially the ones that were considered. I mean, they all had incredible films and were historically great directors in their own right. It's just, I don't think the franchise would have been as great personally. I mean, slasher films were a complete dead genre at the time, and they were believed to be repetitive, predictable, and boring. Scream really was able to breathe fresh air, and it was very unique and different, and it played on the sort of the meta aspects and was really built in realism. You know, it kept you guessing the entire film. It was the complete opposite of what slasher genre was known for, and its credit as a film really saved that whole slasher genre. So who knows if Scream would have done this with someone else's direction? I'm not saying Scream wouldn't have been a great film or even franchise, but I don't think it would have been iconic, classic, you know, sort of game changing. It's very likely Scream would have been just another typical slasher film. Maybe slightly different, but it very well could have gotten lost in that genre over time. And hopefully with these new creators of the upcoming Scream 5, which is set to release in 2022 for those that don't know, hopefully they will do Wes's legacy justice and make Wes proud. And I mean, this is just such a beloved franchise, and it's hard to imagine a Scream film without Wes Craven. Yet, here we are. And though I am excited to see Scream 5, probably much more excited than any film I can think of in a long time, of course I still have my concerns. I do, however, want to go into Scream 5 sort of unbiased and on a clean slate, because I want to give this film, you know, a chance. I want to properly give it credit going in, and I want to go in with a clean slate, so that way when I approach this film I can sort of be non-biased on what I think. You know, I'd love to hear from you and what you all think. You know, as always, this is a discussion, so I'd love to hear from you. Like, do you have your concerns? Do you have your ideas? Or do you feel like me, like, hey, let's just go into this film on a clean slate? I'd love to know. But either way, so, you know, Scream, obviously, I've said it multiple times, is my favorite horror film and franchise ever. You know, I'd love for them to continue making Scream films, but solely because they are great and they maintain the sort of roots that made Scream so successful. I don't want to see Scream become another cash grab. You know, franchise turned cash grab, because they know that the fans, like myself, will go to see them regardless. But again, as always, this is a discussion, and I want to hear from you. So join the discussion down in the comments below, and let me know what you think. I mean, would you have liked to see these alternative versions of Scream? You know, would Scream have been the Scream that we know and love today had someone else directed it? You know, which one would you have rather seen? Would you rather have seen a George A. Romero or Sam Raimi directing Scream? Like, if going off the assumption it was either or, which one would you have rather see better? And of course, did you know about this prior to this video? I'd love to hear how many people knew these little fun facts, I guess. And of course, what's your overall opinion on Wes Craven as a filmmaker? I'd love to hear that too. I'd love to hear how people truly feel about Wes Craven's filmmaking. Not necessarily specific franchises. You know, obviously, if you want to tell me your favorite Wes franchise, I'm more than happy to hear about it. But I'd love to know, like what's your honest opinion about how he creates films, like the direction he goes, all of that. And but yeah, if you enjoyed this video and are looking forward to the others that I have coming out, then hit that like button. It helps me out a lot. Lets me know that you enjoy these types of videos, and you know, it keeps me motivated to keep making things like this. But also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, follow by the bell notification so you don't miss any of the updates and uploads, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.